Welcome to the Fiscal Physical Podcast. Join us each week as we sit down with the founder of Alchemy Wealth Management and author of Your Fiscal Physical, Ryan Nelson. Tune in to gain valuable insights and practical tips as we simplify complex financial concepts into digestible lessons. From budgeting to retirement planning, this podcast is your go-to resource for mastering financial literacy.
Welcome, everybody, to this week's episode of the Fiscal Physical Podcast. Happy to have you guys with us. Appreciate all the listeners out there. Without you, we probably wouldn't be doing this, or at least we wouldn't have people listening to it. So thank you so much. Wouldn't be the Fiscal Physical Podcast without my co-host, Ryan Nelson, founder of Alchemy Wealth Management. Ryan, how are you today?
Doing really well. How are you doing?
I'm doing solid. I appreciate it, man. Thank you so much. Thanks to all the listeners out there. Wherever you get your podcast, set your clock, set your watch, set your reminders. Every Tuesday, these episodes drop. Find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts. Happy to do it. So, Ryan, you ready for this week?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
All right, let's dive in. So, I was going back and I was thinking about our, I think it was last week's world famous personal section on this podcast.
Sure.
I know everybody's out there just waits for that section here. So, we talked about going back in time and, going back to one, a date for 24 hours, what it would be. And we had some good answers there, I think. And so it really got my brain a-churning about this, I love a good hypothetical just in, just in general. And it doesn't get much juicier than this one, I'm going to tell you. So I think we've all probably thought about this in our lives. So for this context, we're going to go back to what would you do differently financially if you could go back to age 22? Now, the scope of this, I'm going to kind of outline it here for you. So you get to go back to when you just graduated college. You have the same income level and growth trajectory career-wise. However, would you, do anything differently? Would you do anything the same with your money? Like, how would you kind of approach that? A little bit of a difficult question, I think, because it's really, you can make it what you want. But it kind of goes, the main thing is I'm thinking about our listeners who are in kind of this range. Like, you always say like, oh, back in my day, or, oh, I wish I would have done this kind of thing. Right. Like, this kind of like paints the picture of like maybe what you can do right now in the same way. So hopefully it all kind of ties together. But with that mumbo jumbo there, Ryan, I'll turn over to you. See how you want to approach this one.
Yeah, to your point, I think one of the most common things I hear in my profession is somebody coming in and them saying, man, I wish I would have hired you earlier, or wish I would have started this 10 years ago or 20 years ago, right? Or I wish I would have started this when I was my kid's age. So, it's a really sort of common question. I think that, the main thing is everybody says they wish they would have started earlier.
Right.
That's like almost universally everybody, I think, believes they wish they would have started earlier.
Have you ever come across someone who was like, man, I'm so glad I started right when I did? Like,
yeah, right.
Of it, like, I feel like that's very rare.
There's people who are good savers. So like I have a lot of clients, I'd almost loop myself into this bucket, who are more natural savers. And I think that like I was saving in college as an intern in college, right? And like, so I think there are people who have a proclivity to saving, and like they did start early and started young and have been aggressive as far as savings goes their whole life. So I think there are people who probably just naturally, for whatever reason, have gravitated towards putting a percentage of their assets away from the very beginning. But largely, yeah, I think that when you take the median population, it's like, yeah, I wish I would have started earlier.
I feel like that's a classic. Right. Yep, for sure.
So yeah, that's definitely wish I would have started earlier. So I'd say for most people, getting started right out of college, so we're graduated college, we have the same income. I really think that in hindsight, most people would look back and say, man, I wish I would have saved more.
Sure.
I think that's the main thing. And I'd say, as like words of wisdom would be to automate that, to set up a small amount of automated savings, whether it's weekly, monthly, whatever, and just do it consistently, right? Automate it so it's out of your control, so to speak. You're not thinking about it. It's not relying on further self-discipline. You've just automated the process, and you can just let it do its thing. I'd say a lot of people too, they sort of regret not taking advantage of their employer's match.
Oh, yeah, that's a good
So
one.
if they say, man, I hadn't participated in my 401k for the last 20 years, and then in hindsight, it's like, gosh, if I would have taken advantage of that employer match for those 20 years, I would have been a lot more money I got from my employers, right? So not only my money would have been going into my retirement, but my employer's money would have been going into my retirement. So I think that's a big one that a lot of people would have appreciated sort of starting earlier right out of college.
Yeah, and I think the employer match piece of it, sometimes it can be like, even if it's just a small match. I remember when I met with you, one of the first times, you're like, oh yeah, if you get a match, like take advantage of that. Like that's free money like, that you're getting there. So, and even like you mentioned, like over 20 years, 15 years, whatever, that even that small amount, whether it be $100 a paycheck, like that adds up over time. And like you really, at the time, you're like, oh, $100, who needs that? Like, but it's like, I'm not even getting that until like 30 years.
Right.
But you'll be kind of happy with that.
Yeah,
later
definitely.
in life.
Yeah, it adds up. It's surprising.
Yeah.
But and then kind of stretching your prompt a little bit here, but like maybe not right when you graduate. But well, I think something useful is setting a savings rate that's like a percentage of your income.
Oh, smart.
So let's say you graduate. Let's say let's say you just say, for easy math, you say I'm going to save 20% of my income. Cool. Then maybe you were making $50,000 when you graduate, so you're saving $10,000, right? The problem is a lot of people start saving $10,000 and then they start making 60 grand, but they still are saving 10,000,
right.
And then they're making 70 grand. They're eventually making 100 grand, still saving $10,000 a year. Now, this person did a good job. If they started saving 10 grand a year right out of college, they did a good job. Mm-hmm. The problem is now they've sort of proportionally started saving less and less without even meaning to. When they were saving 10,000 out of 50,000, that was 20% of their income. Now they're only saving 10% of their income, 10,000 out of 100,000. So that means the other 90,000 is going to their lifestyle. Mm-hmm. So they've now increased their expenses, which means they've increased how much they need for retirement, but they haven't then increased their retirement savings. So they've made more money in actually taking themselves further away from their retirement goal by increasing their expenses, increasing their retirement needs, keeping their retirement savings the same. So I would say if you just structure your savings as a percentage of your income, or if you think about it that way, it will naturally scale up with you over time. So as you're earning 50,000 and you're saving 20%, that's 10 grand. And then as you scale up and you're making 80,000, now you're still saving 20%, so you're saving 16 grand. As you get to $100,000 of income, you're still saving 20%, so now you're saving 20,000. So looking at it as a percentage of income as opposed to a flat dollar amount you're saving allows it to scale as your income grows, and it keeps you from sort of moving further away from your retirement goal as your income increases. Because I see it all the time where somebody they may start making more money, and as they make more money, it takes them further and further away from their retirement goal. And it's counterintuitive. You wouldn't think that'd be the case, but it happens all the time. I would almost argue, at least in the cases I see, usually making more money takes people further away from their retirement goal because it increases their expenses at a faster rate than it increases their savings. So
that's fascinating.
Yeah. So the opposite should be true. If you make more money, it should be easier to retire, right? But the problem is most people don't view their savings as a percentage. They
like a flat rate normally is like, hey, oh, cool, I'm saving $500 a month. I'm just going to continue to do that because it's what it is. But like, hey, I'm making 20% more. Let me make that $600 a month instead, kind of piece of it. Oh, that is fascinating. I didn't even think about that. Yeah, I should probably look at my finances.
Yeah. So yeah, that'd be. I mean, that'd be the number one thing for sure. The other thing that I would say, like, that people probably regret is not having like a good emergency fund. And that could go both ways. So some people have too much money in their emergencies fund. Some people have too little money in their emergency fund. But the reality is, I think if people could go back in time, there's some people who maybe have too little in their emergency fund, like basically let's call it no emergency fund. And then an event happens and they have to start taking money out of like their old 401k or something, and they're getting penalized, right? They're taking it out before they're allowed to. So they're getting penalized and paying taxes. And then in hindsight, you're like, man, that deteriorated my net worth because I had to pay like these extra penalties. If I would have had an emergency savings, I could have avoided that, right? Sure. And then the flip side is true. You'll also talk with people who, in hindsight, maybe they've kept $250,000 in cash for the last 30 years as basically their quote unquote emergency savings. And it's like, gosh, in hindsight, they say, man, if I would have invested that, if I would have only kept 30 grand in emergency savings and invested the 220 grand, it would have grown into, who knows, maybe $1 million, and so it's like, man, I left a lot on the table by not properly managing that emergency savings. So that'd probably be the next biggest thing is kind of that, I'd just call it cash management, making sure you have the right amount in your emergency savings. We can see how both having too little or having too much in your emergency savings, both can deter from your long-term retirement success. Yeah. So yeah, that'd be the next thing. And then maybe we'll just touch on, there's just so many things.
Sure. Absolutely. I mean, I think the list is enormous about what you could do. And just button in here just as far as myself, I remember when I first learned, thanks to Ryan, about really learned what a Roth a Roth IRA was, and I was like, oh my gosh, I started doing the math on what if I would have started this at 18?
Yeah, right.
Even if I didn't max it out, I just get something in there, and then that taxable or that growth is tax free with it. I'm like, holy smokes, I could have had 10 more years ahead of this, kind of piece of it. So, I wanted to get that one in there because I was like, oh, I wish I would have actually been a little more serious about that. Then, but also I'm like, that's probably better that I started at 27 versus 57 too.
Oh, definitely.
So
right, yeah, for sure, yeah, and it's again one of those things where there's a lot of people who, in hindsight, would probably say, man, I wish I started when Aaron did at 27.
Right, yeah.
And you're saying, man, I wish I had started at 18, right? So, yeah, to answer your earlier point, it's everybody wishes they would have started a little sooner,
exactly,
right?
Yeah.
But so if we say, okay, just basically starting investing is the number one thing, and automating that investing, right? And then the number two thing would, and let's say that so from an investing standpoint, let's say starting investing, automating the investing, automating the investing as a percentage of income. We'll kind of call all of that just early investing. Mm-hmm. Number two, we can call the emergency fund or cash management. And then number three, I would say would revolve around debt. I think too often people in hindsight, they, so maybe if we're keeping using this example, they graduate college, they get a job, they go buy a new car, or they buy a house, and they go too far into debt, and they don't maybe fully understand the implications of that debt, right? And maybe instead of buying the car, if they would have just saved up for 5 years and bought the car outright or something, right? So yeah, I think just the misuse of debt can be sort of devastating for a lot of people, and create bad long-term habits. So yeah, I'd say investing early and often, proper cash management, and then let's say proper debt management.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I think one of the things I saw that you were going to touch on too, or could potentially touch, all of those are habits, I would say, that you kind of build. And I feel like everybody, I can't remember what the saying is about how long it takes to build a habit, or how long it takes to break it or whatever. But if you start at that younger age, and you're just oh, this is just part of what it is it setting up a percentage that goes in? Cool. I know however much I make, I'm putting, 7% into my savings, or whatever the number might be. Or I'm hey, it's starting from a young age. It's maybe I don't buy the $20,000 car, and I buy the $10,000 car, because I can buy that outright, and I can keep that cash flow kind of going. So just thinking about those things and building those habits from a young age. And that's, for myself, I have a 2.5-year-old at home, and it's all about habits and routines.
Right.
If you can start that and be cool, we take a bath and then we go to bed. We brush our teeth, we do these things, and you just kind of build those. And I think about the habits that I've built over my life, good or bad. Those are things that I started from a young age. And so if you think about it, just starting to think about it financially, I think is also huge. I mean, if you could start thinking financially, building good habits there, versus when you're holy smokes, I'm now making more money, maybe I should do something with it. I feel like it could really, really help overall. And all of those things you mentioned, I was oh yeah, just building good habits with these areas that maybe you don't max out the 4 or the Roth, but you get something into it. And I think that's super important, and kind of what you've been talking about there. If you don't go into debt early, maybe you don't have as big of an opportunity to go into it later, because you're no, I like not owing hundreds of thousands of dollars on something.
It's kind of funny too, just kind of thinking about that. If you graduate college, let's say again, and you go buy that BMW, you're doing it gets you around just fine as the Honda Civic, right? But you're buying the BMW, so you look cool in front of your friend, right? And what's interesting though is it's the people who bought the BMWs are then, at age, let's call it at age 60, are looking at the people who bought the Honda Civics and saying, man, you're already retiring? I didn't even know you had that much money. Like,
Right.
you know, like, and then they're like jealous of them for being able to retire at 60 and they're going to have to work till they're 70. Right.
Yeah.
Or, you know, whatever, change the numbers as you see fit. But, you know, I love the kind of the saying, like, you can either look rich or be rich, but you can't do both. And, it's kind of funny. It's like, yeah, you know, in hindsight, which I guess is exactly your original question here, is like, in hindsight, I think a lot of people maybe have made decisions to look rich, and it actually detracted from them actually being rich. And in hindsight, going back and saying, man, I wish I would have bought the Honda Civic instead of the BMW, and I'd have more money in my retirement, be able to retire earlier, have more financial independence, be able to travel more, right? Like, I think, yeah, in hindsight, probably a lot of people would go back and maybe not make those ego purchases and make the more practical purchase, which is easier said than done.
Right, yeah.
And in hindsight, it's easy to do. But then even today, like, you know, it's always easier said than done.
Yeah,
all this stuff.
it's funny you mentioned that. I was talking to my wife the other day, and we were driving through a neighborhood, and she's like, "Oh yeah, like I had some friends who used to live here," and she's like, "Wow," and she was like thinking about those like that family friends. They were like a family of like four, like two kids and adult. And in her mind, she was like, "This family always like looked very poor. Like they they just passed their clothes down. They always got hand-me-downs. They like never had anything flashy. They always had like really old cars, like these different things." She's like, but then every summer they would go like on an 8-week vacation extravaganza through like different places and like through Europe and all these different places. And she's like, I found like, I found out later that they were just like very, very wealthy, but you would have no idea, like looking at them. Like, she's like, they did not look like, and she's like, but they just use their money. They were like, no, we don't find this important. Like, to get from point A to point B isn't that important to us, or what we wear really isn't that important. But what we do, or how we like, and both of the parents were retired at 45, and it was just like, holy smokes! Like,
that's
you guys
awesome.
have done well, and you get to kind of enjoy those different things. So it's all about like, beauty is in the eye of the beholder, people say, and like, but the perspective on like, oh, like maybe that's not the worst idea to think about.
Yeah, so it sounds like they probably had a good idea of what they valued, and then a good idea of aligning their expenses with their values, which is awesome. Good for them.
Exactly like what you like. I know that when I met with you, you're like, cool. Like, what do you want? What are your goals?
Yeah,
like that's the big piece of it. Of like, hey, like in figuring out, is that goal like, you know, living, you know, with $2,000 a month, or is that living $6,000 a month? Is it $10,000 a month? Do you want to travel? Do you want to buy a trailer? Do you want to play golf every day? Like, whatever that is, like, and figuring that out from a young age, to kind of tie this back, that worked out well, is immeasurable. I feel like if you can at least financially be like, this is what I want to do. I want to work till I'm 50, and then I want to just not work.
Yeah.
If that's your goal, how do we get you there? And I think that's something that, if with the right financial planning, I think you can hopefully make that happen.
Oh, definitely.
Sure. So,
yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Well, appreciate you, Ryan. There's kind of an open-ended question that I asked you here, but I think you did excellent with it, and hopefully the listeners got something out of it, and also kind of challenges them to think about like, man, what would you do at 22? And like, as people have kids or have friends who have kids, you can kind of like pass on that wisdom. Like, there's that man yells at cloud kind of thing. Like, it's like, hey, like put something in an IRA kind of area. But awesome. Let's go ahead and take a pause here, and we'll be back on the other side of this. Everyone hang tight.
And now, to put the personal in personal finance.
Welcome back, everybody. This side of the Physical podcast. Still here with Ryan, and we're getting into the personal section here. Last week's personal section sparked the whole conversation for this episode. So that was, I think, one of the first times that's happened. So that's fun. But we'll see what this one brings. You ready, Ryan?
Let's do it.
All right. So this is going to be a fun one here. What is the most uncomfortable travel experience you have ever had? So you've traveled a decent amount, Ryan. So I'm curious if anything like stands out of like what was you're like, oh my God, like that was horrific kind of piece of it. If you have anything in your mind.
Yeah, I mean, Peru was pretty bad, but you were there for that. But I'll bypass that one. Yeah. And coming back home from Brazil. We had I don't even remember. I think it was like one of those like 20+ hour travel days. Yeah. And one of the flights, you know, I think it's like a 10+ hour flight or something. I don't even remember. This is just how it like sticks out in my head. Although I do think that is true, but it's at least somewhere in that neighborhood. And I got like really sick at the end of the Brazil trip. I think it was like some water or something.
Right.
I don't know how I would have got any water, but I was pretty careful. But anyway, so I ended up getting really sick, and just having to fly home on this like 10-hour flight, and I was just usually I get hot in planes. Man, I was just so cold in this thing. I just like had like one of those little plane blankets, and I was just like sitting in this chair, just like miserable for like 10 hours, basically not able to move, just freezing, like had the chills, just super sick. That was an uncomfortable moment. What about you?
No, that would do it for sure. It's actually funny. A couple of my uncomfortable experiences also involve you, just in general.
Yeah.
There was the one when we went to Colombia, we got sick, had to go to the hospital, but we won't bore everybody with that. But the other one that I was thinking is back in, I want to say 2018, 2017, something like that. We went to Morro Bay, California.
Oh yeah.
And we had a great weekend. It was awesome.
Talking about the car ride home?
Yes. And so, like, for those who aren't aware, like, there's in Morro Bay is kind of in, I guess, like south central California. I don't know how you want to. Somewhere in there. It's like
I'd almost call it even south. I don't know.
Yeah, it's like a 6, 7, 8 hour drive, something like that. I can't remember how long, but
it's like Cal Poly area.
Yeah, exactly. So we drove down. No issues on the way down. Awesome. But on the way back, like that morning, I woke up and I wasn't feeling super great, and I tend to get a little car sick sometimes, but we were driving back and I was like, man, I just don't feel good. I had a donut that morning. I remember it just didn't sit well. Also had some beef jerky. So maybe I'm thinking of that might have done something with it. You had bought all sorts of kind of animal jerky.
Breakfast of champions.
Yeah. You had bought all sorts of animal jerky when you were down there. And
alligator and
probably had some gator jerky that didn't really sit well. Anyway, wasn't feeling super good. So we're on the road, and there ended up being like a big accident or a road closure, and we had to detour away from the original way and take this other way that was just super windy through this like area. And I was just in the back seat, and I was just felt like I was spinning, and I ended up asking your wife now, she was driving, to pull over, and I ended up, vomiting. And that whole rest of that trip was I just felt like I was constantly on the verge of like vomiting.
Oh, yeah,
and I was
miserable.
Sweating, and it was just like, it was off. I was either too hot, too cold. And I swear that trip home took like 24 hours. I was in there just like, I'd nenever been so happy to like get back home, and that was an awful car ride. I remember getting back and being like, "Oh my gosh!" Like and it was in your parents' van.
Oh,
is what we took to that thing. So anyway, that was not my favorite experience, just in general.
Yeah, like, being sick traveling is never fun.
I'm sure a lot of people's experiences kind of revolve around that, I suppose. But anyway, we'll see what the listeners have to say. Let us know what your most uncomfortable travel experience was, if you've ever had one. Hopefully you've had just wonderful trips and no issues whatsoever. We wish that for everybody, but let us know. And thanks everyone for listening. Really appreciate it. Thanks for checking us out, whatever get your podcasts. And Ryan, I will let you have the last word on this episode.
As always, stay the course.
Thank you for joining us for the Fiscal Physical Podcast. Until next time, happy listening. And as always, stay the course. If you have a question or topic suggestions, please email us at podcast@alchemywealth.com. If you enjoyed today's discussion, subscribe to the podcast to ensure you never miss an episode. And consider leaving us a rating and review on your favorite platform. This helps other listeners like you find the show. For more resources, you can visit Alchemy Wealth Management's website at www.alchemywealth.com or find your Fiscal Physical, the book, on Amazon. We'd be remiss if we didn't mention that personal finance is just that, personal. Please don't take anything we say as advice. The preceding content is for informational and entertainment purposes only. It's not an offer or a solicitation, nor should it be construed or relied upon for tax, legal, or investment advice. It doesn't consider your personal financial situation or objectives and may not be suitable for you.